different performances so far this season. G2 have really been stepping it up. Calamity couldn't actually field a roster last week, so this is a team that very clearly has some issues within its roster right now. They are going to be able to play this week, but I'm curious to see what their performance is actually going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, this was a team that had so much hype around them when they first came to the Vainglory8, when they came up through the Challengers. They were a force to be reckoned with. They were supposed to be the next European greatness. Like, they were supposed to be the hope for Europe in international play. And it just hasn't come through. Once they got to the Vainglory8, things have just fallen flat for them.
I mean, it's also a team that we haven't seen so far in this season for Vainglory8, so we're going to get to see them today. It's going to be good watching them because I actually expect this team to do the best against G2 just because of their playstyle. I feel like they can dismantle G2 and not allow them to get to their later game comps where they can play around Hundor just by outplaying them individually, mechanically, and getting advantages mid-game and trying to close out the game. So Calamity Reborn, I think it's a good matchup for them against G2.
Well, let's take a look at their opponents. It is going to be G2 Esports, as you mentioned. Now, this is a team that have absolutely stepped up. They are the second seed right now in Europe, and they're looking for that first spot. Keanu, Nakoa, Hundor, and Dark Potato. Now, obviously, last season, they had a whole bunch of roster swaps and all sorts of nonsense. This time around, they seem completely stable.
Yeah, very stable, very focused this season. We're starting to see the G2 that we expected to see last season, where they came in, they finished off last season incredibly strong with a win in the final week of the season, and now they're trying to just regain that form again. They've been playing very well, just haven't quite been able to take down a team like SK. That's the only team that the team that beat them in both week 1 and 2. So there's could be one of those, Cloud9 Team Solo Mid situations where they're able to beat everyone but SK. We'll see if that can continue to be the trend for them.
Yeah, the issue is that this season you can't afford to get second seed. The world spot is only for seed number 1, so you can't have that kryptonite. We need to see G2 step up this week, but first they have to take out Calamity Reborn. And the player to watch that I want you guys at home to keep your eyes on in this game is going to be Aeon for me. This is the jungler coming out for Calamity Reborn. Obviously, we've not seen them on stream yet this season, but Aeon kind of came into the scene with fairly little reputation, but really exploded onto the scene last season. He had some incredible mechanical play.
I mean, Aeon was my teammate back in autumn last year in 2016. He's a great player that also is very methodical about how he plays. He used to be the sub on the team, and he would always bring in ideas and these different strategies and these different new heroes that no one else played. So he's a very innovative player too. It's very nice seeing him play as a starting on the starting roster for this team. And combined with Leon, they can definitely do great things.
Now, I want to pry a little bit more into your brain here, Zoro, about this draft, because you already mentioned that you think that right now Calamity could be the team that can pick apart G2. Now, we know that they love to protect the Hundor compositions, right? That's kind of the standard composition for G2. What does Calamity have to do to try and break that open?
In my opinion, they have to pick really aggressive compositions and really aggressive heroes so that they can try to get advantages early on in mid-game. Allow your players that are very mechanically skilled to outplay G2's players one-on-one, individually, or even as a team 3v3. Just let them get into the enemy's jungle and into the enemy's lane and try to get advantages.
Now, I have to ask you as well, Bacon. In this one, obviously G2, they're going to have done their prep. They're going to be expecting something like this to come out. Are we expecting to see a different draft out of G2 in anticipation of that, or do you think they'll stick to their guns?
I think G2 sticks to their guns. It's the playstyle that they know and they work so well against. Everyone knows that this is the style that they do. Teams have tried to counter it, and it just hasn't worked out. So I think G2 can stick to their guns, play what they know, play what they excel at. And they, based on what we've seen, very limited that we've seen from Calamity Reborn, they haven't looked up to snuff.
All right, well, we are into the draft anyway. So Catherine and Lance will be taken off the board to start things off here. That means Grace is open for a first pick, but Calamity, they want to go with the Idris.
Yeah, I mean, and Leon playing that carry role, he can do great things with Idris. We know how popular this player is, and it's for good reasons. He's a really skilled player. We haven't seen much of him this season, but I expect him to show up big. I'm hoping he shows up big, because if they beat G2 here, they can send a huge message to the rest of the region.
Yeah, they certainly can. It will mean they get on into that semi-final, but let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. And I'm curious to see as well Leon in this carry position, because I know when Ghost83 joined the roster, there was a lot of discussion internally with the team on who was going to play captain, who was going to play carry. Leon obviously deciding that carry is the place for him.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what they're going to do on the side of Calamity, because now there's so many captains off the board. Obviously, Finn and Arden are still available, but to take away the Catherine, the Grace, the Lance, the Lyra, those are the top 4 at the moment. And usually when the Finn comes out, it's something that's paired with like a Celeste or a Kestrel. Not likely to be the case, but the Kroll has to come off the table for Calamity, because that is such a strong pick for the side of G2. And Dark Potato, they're going to get themselves the BLACKFEATHER. So this is a little bit of that late game insurance. We've seen the BLACKFEATHER be able to do pretty well into the Idris. It's not quite the hard counter that it is into the Celeste, but it is still an incredibly dominant pick. And with this Glaive coming through, this could be that Glaive Arden basically run the same composition that we saw Mousesports on earlier today.
Importantly as well, though, Glaive is something we've seen a lot out of Aeon. This is something that I know when he first came in last season, he was looking incredibly strong. Glaive was definitely a comfort pick.
He definitely did great on Glaive, and Glaive in this meta too is a strong pick, just because it can have so much influence on the mid game and early game by ganking or picking off players that are out of position and getting advantages, small advantages developed into bigger advantages. The draft coming from G2, it's already very different from what we've seen from them so far these 2 last weekends. So interesting just to see them change their plans and not stick to the guns like we were just saying, expecting they would. The Finn come out for Calamity Reborn though. Very strong, just late game captain hero, especially combined with the Idris. I think it can do great for them if they can scale.
I have to ask about this G2 composition, because we've mentioned the BLACKFEATHER Celeste combo in the past. Obviously, BLACKFEATHER's good into Celeste, but their playstyles don't necessarily match up that well.
Yeah, but it's okay in this composition, because the side of Calamity, they obviously do have the Glaive and the Idris that can dive onto the Celeste, but they have BLACKFEATHER Grace that can just dive onto the Idris regardless of where he goes. If he tries to go onto the Celeste, he's going to be moving away from the Finn, away from the protection that Finn applies, and then BLACKFEATHER, Celeste, and Grace can just all collapse onto him. Whereas if they try and play safe, if they try and poke, then you have BLACKFEATHER and Grace that can dive right past the Finn and ignore the Finn. I don't like the Finn pickup in this composition, and I really like what G2 has been able to put together.
All right, I want to ask about the pace that you're expecting to see in this game. Who's going to be the ones with their front foot on the accelerator pedal really dictating this one?
Early game, just because of the Glaive pick, I expect Calamity Reborn to be making the moves, playing proactive. Once Celeste gets to level 8 and once BLACKFEATHER gets to level 8, that's when G2 are going to have the stronger composition and the stronger general team fighting. So if they abuse that, they can get an advantage. But then, while later, when CP just gets to full items and Finn scales, it goes back to Calamity Reborn. So it's very specific points in the game that G2 need to use to their advantage.
So making sure to hit those power spikes and use them correctly. It's time to get on into the second series of the day. Hashtag Vainglory8 on Twitter to let us know whether you want Calamity to bring out the upset or if G2 are the favorites. Let us know. It's time to pass it over once again, though, to Dowsy and Xscoundrel for Game 1.
Here we go, G2 up against Calamity Reborn for our second series of today, Scoundrel. G2 has been showing a fairly strong performance so far in their weeks here in Europe, really looking to try and bring themselves back to their spring dominance earlier on this year.
Yeah, and again, one of those major facets of the G2 composition was always been Hundor. Hundor has been kind of the standout player for them for quite a while now. And on this Celeste, he's got the opportunity to show us that he still has what it takes to, continue to be that standout performer for the G2 roster. Keanu on the Grace, Dark Potato on the BLACKFEATHER to try and threaten Leon, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. And not much to shut down the BLACKFEATher here on the side of Calamity. There's not much really sort of stopping him from using that Rhodes offensive to get through those front lines and get to Leon. But, it's Leon after all. I mean, you don't want to beat
who's renowned for his mechanical skill. I thought you may be opening up, but like you mentioned, Leon pretty hard to stop.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Leon kind of known as being one of the world's best mechanical players, and Idris, I think CP probably having one of the highest mechanical skill caps in terms of his play, especially in the late game, both positionally and sort of straight up mechanically too, as Leon minion candies a giant wave here to put pressure onto Hundor early on. And remember, Celeste's early game wave clear has kind of been hit. This is going to put a bit of pressure onto her. It's going to allow a Leon time to back, and should get back before that wave gets back to his own turret as well. So just put that down to allow him an easy back to go pick up some crystal bits here now.
quite interesting to see. Leon starting up with a armor. Must have assumed that it would be Hundo on the BLACKFEATHER, just not really how G2 have been doing things, but he has been away. BG8, Keanu Nakoa is in a lot of trouble here. Should go down to Leon in just a second here. They're trying to give the kill over to him, and he is able to get it with a Chakram. Aeon and Dark Potato going head to toe, but they will be able to trade one back. Dark Potato picks up that kill. A 1-for-1 trade in the end. Leon, though, able to get that first blood.
That's a good start for Leon here. Obviously, just getting as much gold as you physically can onto him is always going to be one of the better ways to aim your strategy. And they've got that Finn, so he's going to be able to share resistances and share fortified health across the team. Very, very good against the long range of Celeste, which will eventually out. I think that's one of the things that will be on Calamity's mind. You know, you are going to... the best way to play that defensive strategy until they can find that opening. Because apart from Aeon, you'd imagine in the late game that the engage potential is moderately limited from G2, from Calamity. I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you, ex-scoundrel. Hope that that sneeze went all okay. You see Dark Potato moving in onto Eon here. Eon should be able to get away. Nice little use of that afterburn. Does feel bad whenever you have to use it defensively, though. Calamity are going to move forward, looking to try and steal this. Finn has a lot of burst potential in the early game, but way too late to burst that down. Now Aeon's in trouble as Dark Potato with this healing from that Treant will fall down. Scout Trap won't quite get the kill, but Keanu Nakoa will be able to find it in the end. Over on the lane, Leon's struggling against Hundo as well. Those Helo Genesis have been doing work to the melee Idris as he currently stands. Hasn't got the crystal power to unlock a ranged format, although if he builds a crystal bit, which he did, he now does have the crystal power to do so, so it is now ranged for the Idris. Ghost will go very low under the turret, but should be okay. G2 are able to pretty much steal away all the backs, so Calamity are really struggling at this point.
Yeah, Eon and then Ghost specifically being targeted by Keanu Nakoa and Dark Potato. You know, a duo that has worked so well together for a very long time now. Eon and Ghost had a huge amount of pressure put down onto them and don't seem to have been able to cope with that onslaught that G2 have been providing on the jungle side of things. Leon, on the other hand, slightly behind.
Ooh. Okay, Hundo should be fairly safe here. In fact, Aeon may just go down. If he's not careful, auto attacks come through and Keanu Nakoa will take that one away. Now it's Leon being threatened. Keanu Nakoa will silence up Ghost, and Ghost may just fall to a faint of heart from Dark Potato. No, On Point shall take the kill. 4-1 on the side of G2. And if G2 were ever criticized of anything at Scoundrel, it was Dark Potato's weak early game, something he has really worked on in the autumn season.
Yeah, and he's really found a nice home on this weapon power BLACKFEATHER, something that has become more and more viable coming from the jungle. Really good draft from G2. You often want to try and pair a Celeste with a BLACKFEATHER simply because Celeste's one of Celeste's main weaknesses and one of Celeste's major nightmares, especially as the game goes on, is weapon power BLACKFEATHER specifically, because she doesn't want to build armor, doesn't really fit into her kit very well, and she also finds it very difficult to lock him down because of that Rose offensive. He can go straight over that core collapse, which is one of Celeste's main defensive tools. Having it on the same side means you are probably taking away one of the biggest counters of that Celeste. Dark Potato will be piloting that and has had a really good success early on here versus Calamity, and can't help but feel for Calamity. Leon obviously pretty steadfast in the lane. He's got a pretty poor matchup early on versus Hundo. But the rest of his team, they just are struggling to keep up with the pace of the rest of these VG8 teams, and G2 specifically. They've been accelerating that jungle pace. You know, you said they've been working on Dark Potato's early game. It's been showing, and Calamity aren't keeping up.
No, not at all. And at this point, yeah, it's very difficult to stay in the game with a CP address when you are behind. Always have that comeback mechanic, which is that when the Broken Myth and the Eve of Harvest come onto the build, it just becomes a monster that if he can stack up, stay alive, can really turn team fights around, but you have to get there. And whilst that's all happening, Hundo's only getting stronger and stronger, Dark Potato becoming more threatening and threatening. And so it's a comeback mechanic that's almost countered by the fact that G2's late game is just as strong.
Absolutely, but I mean, we've seen even today, Mousesport showed that CP Idris can very nearly bring a team that I think was predicted to lose from the outset back into the game. And when you've got a carry like Leon, I mean, we talk about it so much, but when you've got a carry like Leon and he's on something like a CP Idris, there is massive potential for once those item spikes come online to really come back into the game with force. And I think that will be on G2's mind, even though they've got the weapon power BLACKFEATHER, pretty good, sort of pick into the CP Idris specifically. Maybe not as good as it would be into the Celeste, but it isn't a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination. As Leon pushes onto that first turret. Here we go.
You might be in a bit of trouble here. There's going to be a quibble to slow Dark Potato out, but here comes that Solar Storm. Leon will be threatened. Dark Potato wants to go in, but a Fountain and a great Afterburn comes out from Aeon to knock Dark Potato away. G2 now have this level 8 on the Celeste, extended range and a turret sieging machine. This turret will easily go down for G2, who have just taken everything so far. A 4,000 gold lead at 8 minutes. They've got gold miners and turrets, and now they're moving into even still more away.
Yeah, and they've nested 4,000 gold in the bank as well because of it. And you can see Hundor very quickly accelerating his build path here. He's seen almost a tier 3 item ahead of Leon, who you would imagine is now working towards Broken Myth second, given his items, but there's also the option of just going towards that alternating current. I don't actually mind the Broken Myth, but alternating current I think is better against the weapon power BLACKFEATHER and the Grace specifically, because you're going to need some potential to kite, and it looks like he agrees with me as he's picked that up.
Yep. Something that I've been theory crafting with is Broken Myth on CP Idris when you are desperately behind as a second item, just to attempt to bring yourself back into a position where if those Broken Myth stacks do get to a high number, you're doing a lot of damage on your chakram. But typically, most players will opt in for the alternating current as a second item because it just provides so much kiting ability, especially when you've gone Frostburn. The auto attacks consistently applying the Frostburn slow. Although on a BLACKFEATHER, very difficult to keep it up. Leon will get hit by a Solar Storm, and On Point takes him down. Now Dark goes looking to get away, but Dark Potato won't make it easy. Makes him force the healing flask for himself, and now no Fountain, no luck. G2 have pushed on into the tier 2 turret, and here comes Hundor with that clockwork now built. Good night turret. It is gone, and Aeon will be forced to once more escape with his Afterburn.
Yeah, you essentially become a limitless and endless siege machine with the Clockwork and the Eve of Harvest on this Celeste, because you can spam Heliogenesis from a very long range. You very rarely run out of energy unless you're using pretty much all of your skills in succession. And it's very difficult to deal with, especially on a team that relies on positional play so much. Idris is a very positional-based carry, and you have a Finn as well, who he's going to soak these Heliogenesis. He's going to become eventually a stacking machine for this Celeste specifically, and it just limits those areas you can actually find and engage. Although
they've knocked Hundor into a compromising position here. He's in a bit of trouble. Forced to cord, pulls 2 in. Hundor though is able to 1v1 Leon, and now a Solar Storm will not quite find the kill, but Aeon was destined for death nonetheless. Ghost, what can this Crocodile go? Only to a grey screen. It is an ace for G2, and they're making this game look easy.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Dalsy. They're making it look none other than a very easy game right now. You've got Dark Potato, 2-item spike, no reflex block for Leon, as well as he got caught out by that core collapse. It was an aggressive move. I think given this situation in that team fight with Hundor being so low, I think most people would have made the same decision that Leon did right there, which was I'm going to try and take him out. But Hundor outplayed. I think is the only way to describe it. Wonderful placement of the core collapse, and again took out Leon, who was attempting that tower dive, behind on levels, behind on item spikes as well. Leon very rapidly working towards that Broken Myth though, Dalsy. Although you would imagine Hundor's actually going to finish it first, and right now, if Hundor finishes that Broken Myth, I feel like that's going to be lights out for the Calamity composition.
Yeah, we've got another fight breaking out. Perhaps as Leon able to secure the turret, but Dark Potato going in onto Aeon here. Leon hit by that Heliogenesis and another Shimmer Strikes to try and get away, but here comes the Solar Storm, will be dodged. Leon on the front line, and he is out of luck, will fall down, and now it's Aeon's turn to follow his carry home. Kiana Nakoa says, "Hello, Aeon." Holy Nova makes himself look impressive, and now it's G2 pushing the lane, but They don't have minions just yet, so at this 11-minute mark, they can walk over towards the gold miner. If he's back spawn in half a second, then Hundo will eagerly eat them up. And Scoundrel, I guess while we've got this kind of little midpoint, we can kind of talk a bit about Calamity Reborn, who are sitting at the bottom of the leaderboard with 1 point, Clash just 1 point below them on 0. Currently, they are in the danger zone. The bottom 2 teams here in Autumn will be facing challenge battles at the end of Split 2, and we've just finished the European Challenge Series VGL Split 1. These teams like Clash and Calamity Reborn, they've got some pretty immense competition waiting for them on the other side of the Challenger Series line.
I mean, we had a great VGL finals. Obviously, Team Queso there had the likes of 90 Degrees as well, another promising team coming through. There's so many good teams now in the VGL Challenger Series, and I think they could provide some real threat to the bottom side of our VG8 table right now. Calamity Reborn, they look a bit despondent right now. The actual team environment doesn't seem like they are playing all on the same terms at this point. They haven't had many weeks where they've played their starting roster at the right, sort of the way they would have wanted to. This team is at real threat of being relegated if they don't shake things up, and you'd expect a team with this kind of talent level to provide a little bit more of a threat, maybe even contend and keep up with G2, but right now it doesn't feel like that's even remotely on the cards. Leon has got a bit of armor in tow, but he's getting caught out by these core collapses in all of the fights. You would imagine that a reflex block would be a point of call for him, but look, it's on the cards.
It's actually this time last season we had the summer season challenge battles, and G2 clearly were not playing to their full potential at Scoundrel. They had some roster issues, they had some real life conundrums that they were struggling to deal with, and they had fallen into the challenge battle zone. And Calamity Reborn was coming out of the VGL Challenger Series and actually 2-0'd every opponent they went up against, including G2. Now we see that G2's on form, and they are not allowing Calamity the same respect. Perhaps this time Hundor goes down. No, he does not. Aeon cannot find the kill. Leon's dead, and Aeon's dead as well. Hundor may lose his life to a quibble. He does, but the ace will come through. Nonetheless, for G2, 13-2, a 10,000 gold lead at 14 minutes, and a huge wave pushing the base.
Huge wave. I don't know if they're going to be able to finish the game here, but they might get at least one Vein Crystal turret. At the very least, they're going to shove the minion wave in and back off. Leon, I actually think, made a pretty good move there. Sometimes when you have an opportunity to push onto a Celeste in a team fight, you have to take that opportunity and try and take the kill, because otherwise you might not find the ability to get to the backline as easy in the future, especially if they have time to reposition, coordinate. But again, they're just so far behind. No reflex block, no shielding. Gets shredded by the Supernovas, and the Heliogenesis when he got hit. And Hundor again able to escape with just a sliver of HP, and it just felt like the Calamity Reborn roster was a little bit behind the pace of Leon there as well. It felt like it was Leon trying to 1v3, and the rest of Calamity trying to catch up with him at that point.
Very interesting to see Kiana Nakoa building a heavy prism, probably going towards a Shatter Glass on this Grace instead of a Echo for one single huge burst heal and a bit of extra damage reduction.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a direct replacement for the Echo and the Grace build. I think given the way these team fights have been going, the huge heal onto Celeste might be better than splitting your heal into 2. It also means it frees you up to not have to channel that ultimate twice in a row, meaning that you have more time to position for Holy Nova, more time to find good benediction locations, everything like that. So this basically keeps Kiana Nakoa a bit freer in team fights. And also, given that Hundor is the one taking the majority. Oh, late Crucible.
That's a pretty big force to core. Dark Potato goes very low to Leon. Calamity Reborn have separated G2, but they're looking to try and get onto even playing grounds. Dark Potato will get the Divine Intervention, and Leon is split from Aeon. Aeon in the front line, looking very low. Solar Storm's already been used by Hundor here. It is just going to be G2 now repositioning in and looking to get on top of Leon. Oh, that damage is just disgusting. And Dark Potato will be able to finish the job. That's Ghost falling as well. Hundor with his full build, and Leon with no shielding, in fact opting for armor, will be a easy target for the Celeste.
Whilst I think armor is pretty critical against the BLACKFEATHER, do you not feel like Leon has died more times to Hundor this game than he has specifically to Dark Potato? I feel like Hundor's been doing the majority of the damage to him, and the core collapses and the stuns have been a major issue for Leon in these fights. as the
Hundor's
solo
such a
squad
god.
takes him down. This is G2 just winning, Dalsy.
This is G2 just winning. Unless Leon makes a miracle happen, which he will not be able to do, unfortunately, it is G2 winning once more. And Hundor, the god that he is on this Celeste, once more finding another victory. G2 have done it so many times this season, and it just feels like it is becoming a constant in the European Vainglory 8. Give Hundor Celeste win the game. I wonder if the desk agrees with that.
I mean, I definitely agree with that one, Dowsy, and I think the rest of G2 will as well. Dark Potato also putting up an excellent score, not even dying in that game. And honestly, we went into that one talking about Calamity Reborn's mechanics, that being their saving grace. It was all about G2's mechanics in that one.
Yeah, amazing team fights. I mean, there were some lapses in the mechanics, but it just didn't matter. They were too far ahead by the time that came out. Like, there were a couple late reflex blocks on the forced accords, but it didn't amount to anything because they had such a massive lead.
Yeah, I mean, also, Calamity's draft didn't really play to their strengths, which is the mechanics that I mentioned. With the Idris and the Glaive and the Finn, you need to have superior strategy. You need to have superior team fighting, which you clearly don't against G2. So I think their drafts need to be a little bit more to their strengths, characters and heroes that can play more aggressive and can outplay G2 on an individual level early on. They didn't have that draft.
Yeah, trying to split G2 up and find those 1v1 skirmishes, find those ways of getting those advantages in the early game. I mean, these are just some highlights of what happened in the early game, but honestly, in terms of the replays, there's not a huge amount to talk about just because this was such a cut and dry victory for G2.
Yeah, I mean, there were multiple times where they tried to isolate Hundor, they tried to get him separate from the rest of the team, and whenever they did that, there was no follow-up. It was very strange. Like, there was times where they would land a forced accord that would pull in like 2 members, and then they would all be backing off. It was just, if there was a disconnect amongst the members of Calamity Reborn where it just felt like they weren't necessarily on the same page at all times.
Yeah, now we do have a clip from around 10 minutes into the game. This is where G2 managed to get their first actual ace and turn it into objectives.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they're a little bit ahead to 6K gold lead almost. Leon tries to dive on Celeste, which is what they need to do to win against this comp. They need to get on Celeste and kill her. But because they're already so far behind, you can't really easily do that, especially with Idris doing it alone. Finn wasn't with Idris on the front line, neither was Glaive, not really. So again, you don't have the team play that you need to execute these drafts. You need to adjust your draft to fit your composition or your strengths better.
Yeah, and again, this is something I talked about in the draft, was I did not like that Finn pick specifically for that reason. That was exactly what I was talking about. You have Idris who can dive onto the backline, get onto the Celeste. That's great. But he's just as squishy, and he has no support with him whatsoever because the Finn just can't get there. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. The next replay is around 15 minutes into the game, and this is when we saw Hundor just barely cling on to life during this fight.
Yeah, this was absolutely crazy. He gets the huge heal coming through, somehow manages to stay alive, and again, no, they ignore him then. Like, they're like, okay, Hundor's out of the fight. No, he's not. Like, he's always going to be there. The forced accord did come through at the end to try and pull him back in, and did eventually get that kill, but it was just, again, too little too late.
Also there, the Grace didn't have an Echo. Keanu chose not to build it, and that's why it was kind of so close. Had he had the Echo, there would have been another heal that would come off on Celeste, making it nearly impossible to kill her off. So a little bit of an itemization mistake perhaps coming from Keanu, but it all worked out, and they ended up taking the game after that kill. They pushed out with the Kraken to finish off the game. Glaive, Aeon, the only person left. He can't do much in this scenario. And it's just, again, Calamity, you're not a match for G2. You have to play to your strengths.
Absolutely. Now, I want to start to talk about what Calamity's strengths are, right? We've mentioned how it's their mechanical play, the fact that they might be able to outplay their opponents. How do you draft into that? What do you draft to try and find those scenarios where you can make the plays and you can kind of dance around G2?
I think you really need, like, early aggression that, you know, get onto a Taka or a Kashka or something that can just dominate the jungle early on, because that is always been kind of one of the weaker points for G2, is that Dark Potato plays these junglers that usually take a little while to really come online. And so that's the biggest opening into G2's game plan, is to try and just get that early dominance, force 1v1s, force 2v1 situations, just get them isolated. And you saw, again, they would try and isolate Hundor. It would work for a little bit, but they didn't have the ability to fully commit to getting onto Hundor without risking their own lives in the process.
The Ryan pick, that's another pick that Aeon actually plays very well. He used to be very known for it, but and also it can be played very aggressively in the jungle against Dark Potato. So I think that's a pick that they can go for and they can play very well. Other than that, in lane, they can go for things such as Jewel. We saw Jewel on North American side for Rogue. Hammy played it very well. It's such an aggressive pick with a lot of damage that you can capitalize on small mistakes with. So Rhyme, Koshka, Cruel, like you said, and laners for Leon, such as Jewel, such as Vox early on, just try to get an aggressive comp and try to push with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see if they can pull that aggressive composition off. Obviously, G2 are going to be well aware of what Calamity wants to do, and they're likely going to play around it. And we kind of saw that this game as well, that G2 did change their default composition from what we're used to seeing. It wasn't like kind of the double support composition that we've seen from them. Going with that BLACKFEATHER and Dark Potato, that's not peel in any way. Yeah. In no one's book is BLACKFEATHER peel, but it still worked out for them. And Dark Potato, he had an incredible performance himself in that game.
Yeah, and it's still that very durable jungler. It doesn't have the peel that we normally see him have, but it still, takes a while to kill him if you're going to try and focus him down, but he's also being a nuisance and being in the enemy team the entire time. So it still is along the same vein. It's like the cousin of the compositions that they normally run, but they're going to get themselves this grace once again. So G2 obviously more than happy to put the priority onto that hero.
Yeah, grace for Keanu. He's been performing steadily on it, and honestly, it's not a pick that requires too much. It has very specifically straightforward mechanics that you have to execute with the ultimate and the engagements coming from your first ability. So it's a fairly easy hero to play, and Keanu's been performing very well on it. Lance gets picked up from Calamity, and this can go either to jungle and roam. I know Aeon plays it in the jungle too, so it can be a flex, but it will most likely be for the captain here to roam.
And banning away the BLACKFEATHER could mean that they want to get a Celeste for Leon. I feel like if you do want that, you have to pick it up right now, because if you let it go over to G2, they're just going to draft it around and for Hundor. So very smart for Calamity to pick this up, banning away the BLACKFEATHER, giving them that, taking away that counter, and then also just taking away that massive comfort pick for Hundor, and now forcing G2 to have to go on to something a little bit different.
Absolutely, and this Cruel has been a high priority ban across the course of today so far in Europe. No teams allowing that to go through. Nobody wants to let their opponents grab that one. Vox going to be locked in here for G2 though.
This is the Vox Fortress Grace that would make the most sense. That would make the most sense from picking the Vox for Hondor and lane, because it allows them to have a very strong late game. With the Vox, generally doesn't come anymore just because of the nerfs that have been happening on him for the last few updates. So with the Fortress, just because he scales so well, there's the bleed procs, it allows you to scale very well as well. So G2 Esports going for a comp they've played before.
And G2 as a team has always been very big on this Fortress pick. They've always really liked this pick, even when other teams just weren't even thinking about it. And going all the way back a few seasons, they've always been, when we'd go to live events, we'd talk to them and just be like, we think Fortress has a place. We think he's going to be really, has a compositions you can pull him out in. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But right now, it is definitely, this is a meta composition. This is an incredibly strong comp that now Calamity is going to have to find some way to deal with that massive aggression and the huge burst that comes out from those bleed stacks.
I mean, the way to deal with the Fortress comp is to have a really aggressive jungler that can go in there and shut him down. And that's what we said, what we already said Calamity needed to do, just because of the teams matchup. The Alpha, it's a weapon power Alpha. Alpha weapon power is extremely strong mid-game and early game. So if he's going to be going for the Sora Blade build, he can definitely get in there and shut down Fortress early on before he gets to scale. I like the pick.
So I have to ask, I mean, you're saying this in a very matter-of-fact tone, but the Alpha just got locked in. Like, I'm kind of mind-boggled. Like, what are we expecting to see out of this Alpha coming into the game?
Early aggression. That's what this pick is for. Alpha can be extremely strong early on. She is squishy, but it can be tough to actually kill her because of that reboot passive that she has. And with a Fortress, like, Fortress is all engage. Alpha is really good at chasing and preventing you from being able to get away from fights, which is they already struggle with.
All right, it's time to jump on into this one. Hashtag Vainglory8 on Twitter to let us know if you think that this Alpha pick is going to bring Calamity back on into the series. It's time to pass it over to our casters, Dowsy and Xscoundrel once more.
Thank you, Munch. It is G2 and Calamity hitting the Halcyon Fold once more. G2 once more 1-0 up in their series, looking to make it a clean 2-0. We'll have to see what Calamity can say about that, Scoundrel.
Absolutely. I mean, Alpha, Weapon Power Alpha is not something that we see every single day. I think since the release of Spell Sword, I've expected to see a bit of Weapon Power Alpha here and there. I think the actual stats of it work really well. The build that I've generally seen people end up going has been the Sorrowblade Spell Sword Breaking Point build. And actually, it functions really well in the mid game, very strong. And actually, even in the late game, can be a significant threat if you build that Breaking Point up. It's all about that elevated type of composition, though. You have something that is a significant enough threat in the early to mid game that allows you to contest at that level to then get your Celeste in the late game.
They're going to be looking to pick up this central treant. They find it now. Aeon's in a bit of trouble. Core Collapse doesn't quite connect, and Aeon's just going to get put into his passive here. How can Calamity save their jungler is the question. They can't. First Blood will go over to Dark Potato, and Ghost looking like he may just be the second on the menu for the Fortress, as Dark Potato will be able to get the kill over to his carry. Leon under turret. They're diving. Can they get the kill is the question. Core Collapse on to Dark Potato. He will fall to the turret. Hundor moves in, but into the bush goes Leon. Hundor just about escapes. Aeon is here looking for a prime directive onto Hundor. Can't quite get it. Does jump over Aeon. Can he get the kill is the question. Hundor dipping and diving. Aeon should be able to walk up, and just a single auto attack will do the trick here. There's that Core Collapse up. Not Core Collapse. The ability that allows Alpha to dash forward.
Core charge, yeah. It's, funny story about that. I did make an alpha video when I first started making videos, and the entire video I called it Core Collapse, and afterwards I realized it was Core Charge. I had to remake the whole thing. So I also have a funny story about calling it Core Collapse, but it was just a lot more effort on my part.
It's almost a sad story in your aspect.
Yeah, very sad story. What a wonderful outplay by Leon into the turret there. Just as he was outplayed a few times by Hundor in the previous game, actually managed to outplay G2's dive. G2, I think, had eyes of red there. They were searching for the 2-minute ace, or the 1.5-minute ace, I think it would have been at that point. But unfortunately, diving at that level is very precarious, and they paid the iron price for that.
What the hell? Calamity just face check a bush and just destroy G2. Ghost, so much aggression. They just predict that the Impale will connect with whoever was in G2's bush, and it worked out.
Yeah, and actually pre-Crucible era in the game, you're going to get some mega combos coming out if you can make that kind of sort of chain happen. The Impale into Core Collapse into Githia Wall. I mean, there was no way that Keanu, Nakora, or Dark Potato were even going to move in that scenario. Leon gets aggressive. They take away a couple of forward jungle camps here from G2, and suddenly they're off to a much quicker start than they were in the previous games. Much better for Calamity in general, you feel, because in terms of team fighting, they don't feel quite as solid as G2. So if they can snowball it to the point where you can make mistakes in team fights but still come away victorious because you've won the early game that hard, I feel like that favors Calamity in general for this team.
Well, we heard it from analysts that G2 typically have been known to have a far worse early game than their late game, where they just seem so strong. If you can challenge Dark Potato and Keanu Nakora in that early game, then maybe you can find a key to unlocking a win against the G2 roster. Calamity have certainly struck at the opportunity to over-aggression really from G2 at the beginning of the game. That's just allowed Calamity to kind of find themselves 1,000 gold in the lead.
Absolutely, and now Eon very closely working towards that Sorrowblade first item pickup for himself. Leon has gone for the Eve of Harvest first, giving some energy regen, allowing him to clear waves against the likes of Hundor, who's going to start to push him in as much as he can as the the Prime Directive actually lands, but don't think Eon's going to do anything with it, just looking to get a bit of cheeky damage down onto Hundor. Dark Potato also finished his Storm Crown, but really not going to come online until he gets that Aftershock finished up either. And then it's a question as to where he builds that from thenceforth. We were talking about Mouse Sports, and you said that they run this Fortress composition where they go Storm Crown, Aftershock, and then it's Fountain Crucible, or whatever else they need to protect the Vox. G2 don't often play the same way as Mouse, but I'm wondering which one would be better this time round.
Right, so Mouse, they run Aftershock Tension Bow and then into Captain items. G2 go a fairly more typical Fortress build. hasn't worked out for them yet here in the Vainglory8, though G2 argue they're the early adopters of this composition. Look at this, Calamity Reborn turning the fight onto Hundor. Here comes the Solar Storm, he's impaled, he can't move! Great setup by Ghost to help Leon out there. A kill goes over to this Celeste, and now this turret may just go down as well. Good disengage comes out of Ghost with that Giffian wall to knock Kiana Nakoa back, making the Holy Nova not as impactful as it could have been. Calamity will move into the jungle once more to steal away the fronts.
Leon actually being given every ounce of gold on this map right now, and again, Celeste has been such a power pick for this particular reason. If you have a player that can pilot Celeste, and you can pilot her well, she just absolutely rolls over teams if she gets that gold input and hits those item spikes as quickly as possible. Leon almost level 8, you know, about quarter level or third level of experience. That's the major level spike for the Celeste specifically. Once that comes online, you know, Leon's going to start to run away with things, and it just feels like G2 item-wise are a little bit further behind and might not be able to contend with that range and damage that Leon is going to bring to the table.
Throws me back to the spring season when Leon was competing for Team Secret, playing a lot of Celeste back then as well. It was working great for them. Very good at this hero. We haven't really seen him this season on it yet, but look at just the confidence he has to frontline. Now he has level 8, pushing this fairly short-range composition G2 has back under their turret. And now this turret may just boot down as well. Everyone on G2 is in trouble. Core Collapse doesn't connect, but a Fountain will be forced, and Calamity are only moments away from taking the first turret of the game.
And you can see from, you know, the way that... wait a second.
G2 thought they had an opportunity to dive in there, but Calamity Reborn are able to rebuttal. Yeah, Aeon just dives forward, and he will find a kill. He's going to blow up. Kiana Nicole will take a bit of damage, and Kiana Nicole will go down to Leon as well. The action not quite over there, Scoundrel. Sorry about that.
No, I was just about to mention this. Leon looks for the snipe, doesn't quite find it. And Dark Potato actually manages to escape there. Very, very close, like you said. Leon's one of the only, I think, carry players that I see, especially on the likes of Celeste, that can be this aggressive. He also searches in terms of his skill shot location to predict and catch out enemies' movements as opposed to just trying to hit them where they stand. He's so clever in the way that he does it, and you know, sometimes he's over clever with it, and it misses outright, but you know, he pulls off these incredibly flashy moments like you saw there on Hundor. The core collapse placement wasn't exactly, you know, where he stood. He did it to try and make it difficult for Hundor to actually escape using the sonic zoom, and Hundor literally only escaped by a sort of couple of pixels, it felt like, in that situation. But Calamity now so far ahead, especially with just this powerhouse Celeste. Eon now picking up I think he's going to go towards a breaking point, I imagine, here, as he's got a heavy steel in tow with the swift shooter. That would be my guess. So they're hitting item spikes quickly here. Hundor very, very far behind in terms of his own offensive item spikes now.
Certainly is. Hundor hasn't got that Sorrow Blade just yet. He is just moments away. In fact, he'll rotate down to the shop and he'll have the passive gold tick over to 1300 so he can complete it. But there is no reflex block for this Vox just yet, which makes him an easy target for impales like such. He does get rooted on up. Core Collapse stunned. He is CC locked, and he is just about dead. It's going to be G2 now in trouble as Calamity move into the jungle, and Kiana Nakoa will fall. A double for Leon Celeste. Gold miner will be so easy for them to take. They don't even need Leon to threaten it. He can move up and put pressure onto the turret.
Let's strip these teams down a little bit in terms of all the way down to basics, and say, okay, G2 played an incredible game last game, didn't even look close, they made it look easy. Calamity doing something very similar. There's a consistent factor between these two teams that happens to be the Celeste. Maybe going into this final game, but what a snipe. I mean, Leon just absolutely disposes of Dark Potato there. Going to this next draft, you do feel like Celeste is probably going to be taken off the cards now.
Yeah, and Hundor's likely to fall as well as he gets impaled up, he gets knocked against the wall. Kill goes over to Aeon. This could just be the ace as well. Kiana Nakoa trying to find the seconds, but the seconds don't come through. The ace will be there. And Aeon with the termination protocol will survive the turret blast. This is core play from Calamity, just showing so huge. Leon Celeste is threatening. We haven't seen it this season, but it is so threatening. G2 have been reminded that they cannot allow the Celeste to fall into Leon's hands.
I think this Aeon of the Alpha could have literally been anything. Like, I could have literally picked anything and it probably would have still had the same outcome. G2 looking to engage here.
Let's see what they can do. Might just be a fool's errand at this point, as Aeon happy to tank up the damage. He's stacking up that breaking point, and KESTREL is dead. Here comes the Solar Storm. It's going to rip through, but the Gold Miner perhaps protecting them for half a second. Aeon says, never mind. I have a double kill. It's another ace for Calamity Reborn, and we were harsh, perhaps, to Calamity Reborn in the previous game. Xscoundrel certainly was. They have really stepped up their efforts in this second game.
Yeah, and it's 10, 11 minutes into the game. They've got a similar lead to that of what G2 had in the previous, even probably looking more dominant than G2 did in the previous game. I mean, Celeste, man. Celeste is a good pick. Good pick. pretty good hero,
Some good
if you ask me.
I like it. Scoundrels, diagnosis of how to win a Vainglory8 game.
Pick Celeste. I think the problem with the G2 composition is that if you aren't rolling ahead, if you aren't getting ahead, and I think they gave away the game pretty early on with that tower dive. If you aren't ahead with this composition, the range of it is so short, you are forced to engage. You're going to engage onto an alpha, which alpha really only has one mode. And you know, whenever we see an alpha, we always talk about it. You know, the Cruel has got a bit of versatility. He can peel, he can be aggressive. Alpha doesn't really have that. Alpha just has aggressive. You actually have to go, you know, ham with alpha. You have to, you know, stick to your target, fight and fight and fight. If you're going to run onto an alpha, you make her job 10 times easier. And with G2's composition, you know, they need to engage. They don't really have another directive. There's no fancy long-range poke game like the Calamity Reborn roster have with this Celeste. She's just slowly chunking down Keanu.
Yeah, it is going to be Hundor trying to get onto Leon and do the damage here. Hundor can't quite find it as Solar Storm keeps him alive for now, but Leon will go down to a resonance bounce before Hundor finds his demise. Another double kill goes over to Aeon. Man, that is impressive stuff, and KESTREL just about escapes here. I think the one difference, bringing back the Mouse versus G2 debate of this composition, since they are the two Vainglory8 teams to play this composition here in Europe, is that the Mouse's style on the Vox, they build incredibly aggressive. It is literally tension bow, double tornado trigger, breaking point, because it can stack up very quickly onto a Celeste and you know, burst her down. The Fortress becomes a captain that does an incredible amount of first proc damage, which is obviously aimed for the Celeste as well. G2 don't play that style. They play like almost like a jack of all trades with their builds.
I think specifically, if you're going to run that style of position or this style of composition, you need, it's going to be singular threat like Mouse's, you have to build like that, because you need to have that one carry that you're trying to sort of protect or play around has to be the one that deals enough damage to deal with the rest of the team. So that is a correct build to go. Tension bow, double turrets, double tornado trigger into the breaking point. That, you know, that is the build that you want to be playing, because Vox has to be a carry threat. This Vox build it's not going to stack up like crazy. It's not going to single-handedly one-shot a Celeste if he gets to it. This is a Vox build that plays off the front line and then dives in once he's got 15 breaking point stacks, 20 breaking point stacks, and then runs away with the fight. Not going to happen as easily against this Calamity Reborn roster, especially because Calamity Reborn are very, very happy to let G2 engage on them. And then have Eon, who I think very cleverly went for the breaking point second. It's a pretty standard build, but it works out so much more nicely in this situation because he's just there, hitting with core charge. He's getting huge breaking point stacks built up because the rest of G2 are so concerned with putting pressure onto Leon that he's just becoming a monster in these fights that's almost untouched because he's secondary thought for G2. There is no process in G2's minds that's like, well, we better deal with this alpha now. It's all about the Celeste. That's where Eon's just ripping apart the team.
Leon just has so much free charge. There's very little shielding. And look at the damage he's outputting. Here comes the Solar Storm. It's going to find one. It's going to take down the Crystal Sentry, eliminated. And now Hundo and KESTREL are struggling. A core collapse will find KESTREL, and a double kill will go over to Leon. A triple, in fact. Unstoppable on this Celeste. And Now the shielding gets converted from tier 1 to tier 2 shieldings, but it's just not enough at this point. Calamity Reborn going to focus the furthest turret, since that's the one that doesn't get focused by a wave. Here comes the wave as well to take down the rest of the base. Calamity Reborn, 15 minutes in, an 12,000 gold lead. Will take game 2 and a series is on our hands.
And I would be very, very impressed if Celeste didn't become more of a priority in this next coming up draft. It might get banned on second rotation. It might even be warranted as a first pick for Calamity, or G2 might pick it up on their second pick rotation. But either way, it's going to definitely become a major factor here, because on both of these games, it has proven to be the linchpin of the composition. Give credit to Eon though, 7-1-8 on this Weapon Power Alpha. That's not a bad score whatsoever. Played really well into what G2 wanted to do, and was pretty solid, apart from some early hiccups. And Calamity, so it's all up in the air for this third game, Darcy.
Certainly is. Munchable said that his mind was blown when he saw Weapon Power Alpha locked in. I'm sure we will see that as we pan back over to our desk to break down that game too.
You're absolutely right, Dowsy. I'm barely coherent at this point with Aeon pulling the Weapon Power Alpha out. And I actually love this pick now. He's shown us that it can be effective. And the thing is, it fulfills that same slot we've been talking about last week in terms of this Weapon Power jungler. We've seen people play Grumpjaw and Glaive and BLACKFEATHER. Now Alpha fits into that roster as well. This could become a staple pick.
It very much could. I think it's going to stay as a fringe pick for a while, but there is potential for it there because it has that early game strength against a team, like we said, struggles a little bit in the early game in the jungle, a team that wants to just farm up and get to the mid to late game. It is so effective because it was able to be so disruptive into Dark Potato's jungle. He never really got a footing on this fortress, even with going for the Storm Crown to try and shore up that clear speed. It just didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I mean, and I also mentioned last week that it's very overlooked. Alpha is actually a little bit stronger than what people give her credit. On top of that, I mentioned how Aeon is an innovative player, and we see it here with the Alpha pick. Yeah. He needed a character or a hero that can play aggressive and invade, and counter G2's weakness. Alpha exactly played into that role.
Yeah, fitted the bill perfectly. And this was the incredibly messy early game that we started this one with.
Yeah, it was very hectic, very chaotic. And right off the bat, it was G2 finding a couple of these kills, just not quite the proper positioning and readiness for the fight for the side of Calamity. I mean, Leon wasn't able to really rotate and be involved in that fight right off the bat. They do end up trading. They go a little bit too deep under the turret. All of a sudden, Aeon's back up because, death timers are like 5 seconds at the start of the game. And this whole thing just got so messy so quickly. Just kind of it set the tone, though. It set the pace, saying, it was Calamity saying, we're not just going to roll over in this early game. You're not going to be able to just farm up safely. There's going to be skirmishes. There's going to be fighting.
Yeah. And, well, that's what we expected. And then beyond those first couple of fights, it didn't really continue to happen like that.
Exactly. I mean, that was the only team fight they lost in the early game. Calamity Reborn lost in the early game. And it was due to Vox rotating a little bit faster than Celeste, ended up in a 3v2 situation. But after that, they played better. They played as a team, and they played aggressive. I actually think Calamity Reborn could have played even more aggressive. They could have actually lived in G2's jungle because Alpha and Lance can outduel Fortress and Grace so easily for the first 6 levels. They didn't play as aggressive, but they still got the advantages they needed.
Yeah, let's take a look at the replay of when they started to play really aggressively. This was their first ace around 9.5 minutes on into the game. This is where we saw Leon's mechanics on this Celeste really step up.
Yeah, I mean, when Fortress doesn't have his ultimate, he's very squishy. And chasing into Celeste, who has so much damage now because she's picked her Clockwork on top of the Eve and the Frostburn, is not a very wise choice. You can see the Fortress being eliminated after they move forward, they land the root and then the Kythian wall to kill Hundor. And that was when they got the second turret and afterwards the third turret. They ended up having a 4K, 6K gold lead and 3 turrets down by 10 minutes. That's very good for what Calamity Reborn's comp needed to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Calamity, they had far more kills than minutes in the game at the end of that one. Let's take a look at the next ace that they managed to achieve during this game. Bacon, talk me through the fight.
And this was another example of something that Scoundrel was talking about. This entire time they're trying to get onto the Leon, but then you have Aeon just doing so much damage, building up those breaking point stacks and just being relatively untouched, and they can't get onto Leon. you have Aeon doing all this damage, so they're half health before they can even like fully make that dive onto Leon. Then Leon just throws out a Solar Storm and finishes them all off. So it was just the decision making from G2 when it came to these fights. You know, sometimes you do have to take a step back and say, okay, we're just going to try and avoid the Helios and focus on one of these frontliners if that's what the target that is presented to you is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final fight of the game was very similar to that last one that we watched, where G2 try and engage onto the fight, but there's just too much peel to get onto Leon.
And this is where I wanted to see how Calamity Reborn would play. Once G2's composition scaled, they had a win condition, which is to use the Fortress ultimate and then close in the gap on Celeste or focus the frontline to kill them off. But Calamity kited well. They used the Lance to the way, or the Kythian Walls and the Roost to peel off to peel Celeste off of the Fortress Wolves, and they were able to kite away. And that's what I was trying to look at. Are they going to be able to execute what they needed to do in the team fights? And they were able to do it.
Yeah, can they keep G2 at arm's length? They absolutely did in this one. Now, I think as we head towards this next draft, we have to talk about Celeste. Celeste is the elephant in the room in this series. Both teams have had huge success with it in the past as well, not even just in this series. Is this going to be a first man for either of the teams here?
It should be. It honestly should be, because it has been so strong. Unless you're willing to give up the Celeste first pick and then take BLACKFEATHER as your first pick in return, I feel like it needs to be, but it's not going to come out here. So this is interesting from G2. The fact that they banned away the Lance, perhaps maybe going to be interested in running the same composition that they had last game, the similar composition with the Fortress Vox, if they do end up having to counter the Celeste. But because Grace was the first pick for Calamity, a lot of this kind of becomes moot now because it's so up in the air. There's so many things available. Celeste is going to be banned away, as Finn was the selection from G2. That is really curious to me that they ban the Celeste when they have the next pick.
It is very curious because this is going to lead to G2 playing a composition that they haven't won on yet so far in this split, because what they've won on yet is the Vox Fortress, either Lance or Grace compositions, or the Celeste around Hundor build compositions. And they're not gonna get either. With the CP Idris banned too, that's another really strong late game carry that G2 is not gonna be able to play with. They have played the KESTREL Baptiste Catherine in the past, and they've won with it too. Now they're gonna have KESTREL and Finn. They could still pick up the Baptiste last pick, and it works well, synergizes well with Finn.
I mean,
so it's possible.
Last week we saw Hundor just individually destroying on KESTREL. Some of his mechanical plays, his positioning in the fights was just beautiful to watch. He got multiple of the top 5 plays last week, actually, on his KESTREL. So excited to see what he's going to be able to do this game.
Yeah, it also opens up that possibility for the massive combo of Forced Accord into an active camo, into a Quibble. But we're going to get this pedal coming out from Calamity, making more and more appearances on the fold as more teams decide to go to that well and try out the pedal for themselves.
This pedal could be a CP jungle pedal too, just because Aeon is a great pedal player. He's played it so many different times in the past, so it can be a flex depending on what they want to close out the composition with. The Grace first pick, I want to talk about that for a little bit because Keanu had it last game. He chose not to go for the Echo again, and while it worked the first game because they were ahead, it didn't work last game. So while Calamity, it's a strong pick for them, they didn't need to deny it from G2 Esports. The Ringo comes out, and that's going to be a CP jungle pedal, like I was saying. Ringo is going to be the first time we see it this season, and it's going to be on Leon nevertheless.
All right, we have a very different composition coming out from G2 to what we're used to seeing here. The Scarf, likely in the jungle. It could be, I guess, KESTREL in the jungle, but it's less likely to see that weapon power go into the jungle. What are we expected to see out of this game?
I'm expecting to see a lot of action. There's going to be fights constantly because this pedal is going to want to get ahead early, but so is this KESTREL, and it's just going to be a bloodbath. So many rotations from the lane and just non-stop action is what it should be. Hopefully.
I'm hoping that Calamity Reborn plays really aggressive. Ringo does outmatch KESTREL in the lane, and Pedal outmatches Scarf. Play aggressive and get a lead.
All right, we'll see if they can bring that one home. It's time to head into game number 3. Let us know who you think takes it. Hashtag Vainglory8. But let's pass it back to our casters and jump onto the Halcyon Fold.
1-1 tied apiece. Calamity Reborn in G2. Winner takes all in this quarterfinal match. Scoundrel Leon pulling out a iconic pick on this Ringo. Going to be very interesting to see if Calamity Reborn can also make this Crystal Power Petal work in the jungle.
Yeah, I much prefer Crystal Power Petal specifically into this game than I would have done the Weapon Power Petal. Me and you were discussing it, and it's the The ability for Weapon Power Kestrel to just literally fade off in an active camo means it's very difficult when you jump in as a petal to actually find those killing blows, and then you kind of get left in no man's land. And against a Finn and a Scarf, it's not really one you want to be. So I much prefer the pickup of the CP Petal here. They will need to look to push their early game advantage though, because eventually that CP Petal is going to have a tough time against the Scarf.
G2 with a very aggressive early rotation, walk straight into the jungle of Calamity, take away that front treant, take away the middle Elder treant, and now they can just move towards their backs here. I like what Calamity do, immediately moving up to the lane because they know that Hundor and Dark Potato are going to be at the backs, pushing this wave in, trying to deny farm from Hundor, but Kiana Nakoa will be in position to tank up any minions that do decide to run towards the turret.
Yeah, they haven't been able to push it quick enough. Hundor makes his way back into lane here, and he's level 2, so he's really pretty happy to just farm from range as that glimmer shot and active camo, so most situations can be dealt with at this early laning phase for Hundor. And we talked about, you know, pretty iconic for to see Leon on this Ringo. Pretty iconic also to see Hundor on his Weapon Power Kestrel, something that he's performed so well on in the course of this year, really. So really excited to see him pull that one out, because I think I've always seen him as one of the best Weapon Power Kestrels in Europe. And I think in a game like this, you're definitely going to need to be playing your best.
Yeah, certainly one of the most consistent Weapon Power Kestrels in Europe, and I think that consistency is something I value very much from Hundor across the board. In reality of his carry picks, you can always expect that Hundor is going to perform to a level that you need from him, and that G2 can rely on that ability from Hundor to hold them above water. Right now, it's going to be, I think, a very slow start to this one. G2 will not really be threatened early unless somehow Aeon is able to catch out Dark Potato or Hundor on this Petal. G2 will be able to scale nicely into the late game, which is where they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got two incredible late game powerhouses here. A very, very good first tier turret taking machine as well in the form of Scarf and this Kestrel. Hundor takes a critical strike from the Ringo. Ghost is not done yet though.
Ooh, Dark Potato gets knocked up in that Holy Nova, but not enough damage has come out from Calamity to threaten. Hundor does take a lot of damage and forces the healing flask out, so Aeon was able to be effective with his quadruple crystal bits. But look at the damage that comes out from this Scarf at range, the siege, the artillery that G2 have available via Spitfire and Glimmer shots do provide a lot of threat to Calamity, who all or nothing almost with the Ringo and Petal, especially if they're diving on in with Ghost's Benediction.
Yeah, G2 actually get a little bit of an advantage in their back pocket by burning 2 healing flasks from Calamity. So now it's only Leon that has his available. He's pretty low right now, but, you know, like we said, it'll always give him the potential to bait people in. That was one of the major reasons that Calamity got a major win, as he just uses it there, so won't have that bait left. As again, the turret is a target here for G2. That turret-taking machine of Kestrel as the engage comes through.
Yeah, Nakoa will get silenced. Hundor's in trouble. Leon just walks up and takes first blood here on that Ringo. Now it's Kiana Nakoa being threatened. Is tanky enough to be able to weather the storm, but Calamity Reborn able to turn that one right around.
And this is something that I was expecting from Leon on the Ringo. He did it and showed that he could do it on the CP Idris. And maybe it was less relevant on the CP Idris because sometimes that's not always the right move. But on the Ringo, this is one of the carries that can literally just enter beast mode. You know, you hit that twirling silver, you run in, you take a forward aggressive position, and you just run their carry down. And, you know, that's like we said, I was expecting to see Leon be a bit more aggressive in this game because of this pick specifically. He's now picked up that Sorrow Blade as well, so tier 3 item spike. Hundor's going to be able to pick his up now as well and be able to respond. And with a sliver of health remaining on that turret, it won't be long before you feel like G2 consolidate and head towards this lane and try and shove it in with that superior wave shove that they have.
Yeah, it's only going to take a single Spitfire or Glimmer shot realistically at this point for G2 to finish that turret, which would be an infusion of 600 gold going over to the team, which would put G2 nicely in the lead, would put them up to a 1,000 gold lead at this 5-minute mark. You see Aeon moving closer and closer to his first tier 3 item. The downside of building 4 crystal bits is that you do limit that gold, but you do have a lot of damage that comes out of it. And look at that, Hundor really struggling against that Dark Potato is going to charge up his Dragon's Breath, but it's only Ghost being affected at this point. Might be enough to push Calamity Reborn back so they can take down this turret, though. There's a minion candy on the wave. Aeon, aggressive, on towards Hundor, trying to reveal him, and Aeon will look to do so. Dark Potato is in trouble. Fountain able to keep everyone nice and healthy on the side of G2. The Fountain from Ghost also being popped at a similar time, and oh, that's a great shot onto Leon. That forces Calamity into a compromising position. Aeon's trying to find a kill, but he'll just fall down, and now there's no way Calamity can defend this turret, if not save their lives.
Yeah, and Eon, I think, with the right idea but wrong execution, trying to find that aggressive move onto the weapon power Kestrel, like you said, you really want to keep on her as much as you can to stop her from slipping away in that stealth. And Munions, as we know, are a very good tool to stop people slipping away in stealth easily, and kept their tabs on Hundor there. But unfortunately, the other problem with Petal is when she commits like that, if the enemy team decides that they're going to turn around and actually start to try and combat you, that low base HP comes into effect, and Dark Potato immediately turns down, gets the Spitfire and the Goop going, and that will start to shred through Eon, as you saw. Frostburn is a big pickup, though, I feel. I think if he's going to do that, Frostburn's going to make it easier for Leon to get into position. And now Leon is level 6 as well. Even as a weapon power ringer, you have to respect the damage that a Hellfire Brew does. So Hundor's going to have to be very careful in these team fights. I think it's shown that there is potential for Calamity Reborn to dive him. Now with the Hellfire Brew as a follow-up, no reflex block there. Hundor, he's looking pretty suspect to going down in these team fights.
Yeah, no reflex block and no health purchased from the reflex block components that Okart can actually do a lot in tanking some of the damage that the Hellfire Brew does at these early levels. A forced court finds Leon, though. He is just destroyed. Keanu Nakoa strikes true, and Hundor to get the kill credit.
Yeah, no reflex block on Leon, no Crucible on Ghost yet, and Leon just caught out by a really well-timed forced accord from Keanu Nakoa, picking out one of the key members, or if not the key member, of these teamfight damage. Well, the teamfight damage coming out from Calamity, they're going to be able to capitalize with some good neutral objective control, taking the immense payout from the gold mine. They're going to take away as much as they can from that forward side jungle of Calamity as well. Leon looks like he's going a super aggressive build here as well, working towards what I imagine is going to be Tyrant's Monocle, maybe even double Tyrant's Monocle coming out, relying on the Twirling Silver for the attack speed in the mid-game. Just looking to shred through these squishy targets. It will be Eon providing the distraction and slowing down, and you think it would be Leon following up with the immense amount of damage that he'll be able to put out with this particular Ringo build.
You see an fusion purchased up for Aeon at this point, so Calamity Reborn as an investment of 500 gold that they will be looking to use wisely to find a team fight and get some objectives for themselves. That gold miner taken by G2 puts them in a very comfortable position of almost 4,000 gold lead. In fact, it is straight up 4,000 at 9 minutes into this game. This time the Force Accord is dodged out with the Twirling Server. Leon able to get out of that one nicely. This gives Calamity Reborn that re-engage that they need now to move on into Hundor and Dark Potato. They have to be very careful how they do so. Hundor still very slippery on this weapon power Kestrel with the active camera. You see G2 will move towards the fronts and steal that one away.
Again, there is a point in time now where G2 can actually look to exploit the lack of reflex blocks on Eon and Leon, and Ghost not having finished up that Crucible and is a little bit away from it. They probably have a good minute right now where they could look to seek another team fight, and that team fight could result in them picking up another gold mine. They could potentially push onto that tier 2 turret, and I think Keanu is trying to wind up for this. They are targets to try and chase down here. Hundor and Dark Potato have got a lot of burst damage on the table as well. Hundor nearly finishing up his tier 3 tornado trigger, so keeping himself ever so slightly ahead of Leon in terms of build itemization. Although they are very close at this point in time. Hundor has got a minus CS lead as well as the global gold lead too. And he's also been able to invest in a little bit of armor also.
Yeah, certainly. At 20 CS coming up huge, as the global objectives also really helping out here. There's that tornado trigger finished, and an infusion as well to match Leon's level 8 infusion. There is now a Crucible. Worth noting that Ghost has picked that one up, which makes this Forced Accord slightly less impactful, but Keanu Nakoa is not far off upgrading his Quibble into a Is it his Quibble? It is his Quibble to level 5 so that he can stun his opponents here. That's when things get very interesting. Here comes the Hellfire Brew. It's going to land on Hundor. Fortified health comes out from the Polite Company just to try and tank some of that damage up. Leon taking a lot of damage, and Yanako is standing on top of an active camo trap. A one-shot's going to connect onto Ghost to Spitfire onto Leon. G2 not really looking for it full-on engaged just yet.
Leon still had that healing flask in tow, so will get himself back up to a healthy amount of HP. Hundor currently sitting on an infusion. Leon has already procced his infusion, so is maybe looking to hope to convert that aggressive maneuver into a kill or some sort of advantage for his squad. Hundor holding on to it though, as he gets that healing tree on again. One of the, I know the major things that Vainglory wanted to achieve by removing the Halcyon Potion is clever use of the healing Treons. And Hundor used that as a clever use of the healing Treon to help himself out of that pit that he'd managed to put himself in with that aggressive maneuver from Leon. That is that a War Treads from Keanu there?
Yeah, it was used to get them into position. Quibble will stun 2, and look at Aeon's health, he's dead. Goes to very slow Fountain, but the Crucible will block up the Forced Accord. Is going to be a one single kill going over towards G2, and Hundor popping that infusion for that extra damage. The one shot, 570 into Leon there, puts him down to just under 600 health. Now this turret will be sieged very successfully by G2. Nothing that Calamity can do in that scenario. The gold lead is running away for G2, currently up to 7,000 at the 12-minute mark.
Yeah, they're playing a very, very calculated and clever game. Not been full of kills, but it has been really, really sort of a showcase of how to capitalize on small advantages and turn them into something greater for your team. Every single major gold advantage that they have managed to claim on the map so far has been the result of a singular pick of some sort. Just one kill, and they've managed to get gold miners. They've managed to get turrets. They've managed to get, you know, sort of aggressive maneuvers into the sort of forward jungle of Calamity. Every single time they make a pick, they convert it into something, and that is the optimal way to play Vainglory at this level, because there isn't going to be huge mistakes all the time that you'll be able to get aces and have really easy access to the map. You can see here, this is a 4-kill game at 13 minutes with a 7k gold lead. The gold lead certainly hasn't come from the kills, Dalsy, and it's just a masterclass on how to control the map from G2.
Yeah, it's something that European teams at the top level of play do so well, is converting small advantages into huge leads for themselves, because very typically we don't see those massive 3-man team fights resulting in an ace, as teams, once they lose a single member, understand that the team fight will not win, and it's very unlikely they can convert that to something else. So they've had to figure out how to get gold otherwise, and it is an objective-based game after all. These MOBAs have to kill the Vain Crystal, which means that it's not about kills, it's not first to 15 like Blitz. It is all about that Vain Crystal destruction, and that means that you have to take a gold miner anytime that the other team shows hesitance to push up in the lane. Then you're going to be getting a significant amount of gold over them. When you start hitting 8,000 gold ahead of your opponent at 14 minutes, think about what 8,000 gold can build you, Excoundrel. That's almost 3 Shatter Glasses.
It's certainly a lot of money, Dalsy. And money in the bank means that Hundor now at his full build with a reflex block in tow. I much prefer this type of Kestrel build. It gives you the flexibility of basic attacks by adding in the tornado trigger. Sometimes when you play and see Kestrel builds, you see that tension bow variant with the double tyrants monocle that is simply all about the initial on hit and obviously then following up with glimmer shots. This just means Hundor's a bit more flexible, and against the way that Leon likes to play, having the ability to move and attack, a very basic concept in Vainglory, but obviously when you play Weapon Power Kestrel with the Glimmer Shot focus build, you're there static casting Glimmer Shots, but having the ability to...
No. Leon, is he safe? Manages to walk away, but he's into a Spitfire. One shot won't connect. Somehow manages to escape that. Yannick opted to Polite Company rather than Quibble, perhaps that was it. But hey, 15 minutes and the Kraken, she's spawned.
Yeah, I don't think G2, maybe they will. Maybe they'll just push this at their advantage and go for this very, very quickly. They have got a Kraken taking monster team, by the way. Scarf and Weapon Power Kestrel at full build. I mean, look how quickly... I don't even know if Calamity are going to get there in time.
No, they're not even contesting it, Excoundrel. They know what's happening. But what can they do about it? Perhaps they can set up for a team fight. Perhaps they can get a turret. It's another one of those 600 gold for Kraken moments. And oh dear, Calamity Reborn are in a bit of trouble here. Ghost in the middle of it all. Leon's trying to find Dark Potato. 800 damage done with 2 auto attacks. A Hellfire Brew will come through and hit Dark Potato, but he gets the block out, so it's not going to do too much damage. And now Calamity Reborn are forced to walk away. G2 will march them down. Perhaps Leon wants the team fight moving in. Oh wow, Ghost gets destroyed. Here comes a Dragon's Breath. It's going to connect with Aeon, and Aeon should go down to KESTREL. Leon now stuck between a rock and a hard place. KESTREL moves in stealth, and that's going to be a lot of damage onto Leon here. He can't escape this. He will just try and buy as much time for his team, but enough time may not mean anything because the Kraken will be taking down this choke point turret as the ace comes through for G2.
Yeah, they might not be able to end the game here because the rest of Calamity will respawn and Keanu's going to have to make his way across the entire map, but they're certainly going to get a significant amount of damage done. Leon with 13 seconds to go. Maybe if G2 can make a pick here, especially onto Eon, they might find their opportunity. Eon just dead!
Look at that. G2 monsters when they get these late game scaling compositions. 9,000 gold in the lead, and it is going to be Leon looking to take down Dark Potato, trying to save the base. It is going to be a single kill, one apiece for Hundo and Leon. Ghost last man standing. Kraken taking down the Vein Crystal turrets as Hundo will work at them as well. Active camo just to try and escape. It's good prediction by Ghost to know where he's going, but what can he do on this Grace now that Keanu Nakoa is here as well? Aeon respawns. He is marching towards Hundo. Maybe he can blow him up, but it doesn't look likely. This is GG for G2.
Oh, wonderfully, wonderful game of just really cleverly played Vainglory. Played to your advantages. You knew you had good early turret pressure with this composition, so you played to that. You found picks before the reflex blocks came out. You found a couple of picks with Keanu Nakoa, finding those early forced accords. You converted them into global objectives. Those global objectives gave you a massive sort of global gold lead, which allowed you to have that team fight item advantage. G2 just played a really nice Vainglory.
Absolutely did. 2-1 series win for them. They'll be heading on into day 2 of this 3rd week. And with that, we'll throw it back to Munchable to break down this series.
Just a singular Munchable here alongside my analysts. We're ready to break that one down. That was a very different game from what we've seen in the rest of the series. Kind of got to call you guys out. You said that this was going to be an absolute bloodbath. You promised me a high-octane, high-kill game. This was a farm fest until the final fight.
I forgot for a minute that we were watching European teams play, I guess. Because like this should have been a bloodbath. This should have been an all-out war, but they both kind of reverted back to the European playstyle of just farm up and play safe. And that was, I mean, G2 had a composition that was perfectly fine with going for that playstyle. Calamity, obviously, you can see the results there. They did not have a composition that could afford to just farm up and try and get to the late game.
Yeah, they definitely needed to play a lot more aggressive with that Ringo in lane and that with the Petal in the jungle. Petal is a good matchup into Scarf only if she plays aggressive and if she gets on top of him early on. If she doesn't, her monies are going to get deleted later on with the Spitfires. And Ringo, I wish Leon had went for Attention Bow so that he can play really aggressive and try to get advantages with the power spike it gives you early on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at our first replay. It's at 15 minutes into the game, so it was a long time before we saw any real significant fights, but this was G2 finally actually having a skirmish they wanted.
Yeah, and this was just, again, Calamity kind of being split up, not really sure who to focus on. The Hellfire Brew comes in, that gets blocked up nicely by Dark Potato, and then it's just a turnaround. With Kraken already unleashed, G2 are just able to continue this fight and really find the opportunities. You have Dark Potato just getting a huge Dragon's Breath here that ends up doing enough damage to set up Hundor for the kills. Hundor ends up getting most of these kills in the end just because he has that flat burst, but then also playing around this brush, knowing that Leon was up in that brush. Very smart to wait for the stealth and go up there so that he can't just, you know, try and turn that fight back around.
And one of the most important things to bear in mind there is the kill score before that fight was 3-1 in favor of G2. The gold difference was like 6,000 in advantage of G2. Their macro play was exceptional this game.
Their macro play was really good, and that's because after they got a kill, they went for objectives afterwards. We saw the first kill that came out, they got a turret and a gold mine off of it. They ended up 4k gold lead ahead, and afterwards, whenever they got kills, they just continued taking objectives, and that's a really smart thing, and that's what the better team teams do. When you get an advantage, you push it to the limit.
And that's the reason that G2 are in second place in Europe right now. Let's take a look at the final fight of that game and the final fight of the series in general.
Yeah, very unfortunate fight for Dark Potato as it brought his KDA crashing right back down to earth as they were able to finally get a pick onto him. But this was just, again, G2 having this massive lead and just kind of throwing their weight around. Obviously, Dark Potato gets caught, but Hundor just has so much damage, and there's just nothing that they're able to do. This was 2v3. I mean, Keanu Nakoa is still working his way down the lane, but it just didn't matter because the carries from G2 were so strong, and that's something that is, you know, we're saying carries, not the carry for G2.
Yeah, which is kind of a rare situation because Dark Potato, historically, always playing that very defensive style, really stepped up in this series, playing that aggressive style and playing characters that can play an aggressive style. Now, we do have an interview standing by with Hundor, fresh off of their victory against Calamity Reborn. So, Hundor, congratulations on your victory. Congratulations on the 2-1. How are you feeling off the back of this series?
Well, we're definitely feeling happy because the games were good. Except the second one, because we had some misunderstanding in draft, and so we're good games.
I have to ask what happened during the second game, because, you know, the first game was very one-sided to you guys. The second game, you could barely get a shoe in.
Yeah, the second game, we really fucked up the draft because we were like running that rush comp against Celeste and the Lance, which was obviously not working. So, yeah.
And I gotta ask Hundor, G2 as a team so far has been playing very specific comps for either the Celeste or the Vox and Fortress compositions. When you guys have been taken off of those compositions, you tend to go for strategies that don't play to your strengths with the Protect the Hundor composition. So what do you think whenever a team drafts so well against you? How do you try to approach it to get a strategy and get a draft that works for you well still?
Well, you can see that in the third game. Like, we tried a completely different strategy, like playing a double carry with like a heavy protector as Finn. So yeah, they were definitely not ready for this. So yeah, so the game was not really hard.
All right, well, thank you very much for the interview, Hundor, and congratulations on your victory. We'll be seeing you tomorrow in your semi-final, but that is going to round up this series, and the MVP for this series is going to be Dark Potato coming on into this one. Now, when you've got Hundor on the team, it's kind of difficult to get an MVP, but Dark Potato has absolutely stepped up this week. He's been playing much more aggressive characters, and his scorelines have reflected that as well.
Yeah, the 2 games that they won having, almost perfect scorelines, only that one death down the stretch of
literally the
third
final
game.
fight.
Yeah, and even in the game that they lost, it wasn't like a bad game for Dark Potato. It was just a bad game all around for G2. So Dark Potato, I think, definitely deserving just for the fact that he stepped up and played these more carry-oriented heroes that doesn't really have a name for playing.
And that's the type of diversity that it brings onto G2 when Dark Potato plays those carries. Because when a team against G2 tries to pinch them out in draft and takes away the Protect the Hundor compositions, they